So when you set out to make this documentary, and it's a human rights documentary, um, what's the main thing you want both your audiences and, I mean, the powers that be, like the policymakers and the change makers, to take away from this?
You know, we have this, as a filmmaker, I have this dual role, and I think that part of me is doing work that's journalistic, and the other part of me just wants to make a piece of cinema, right?
Right.
So you know, on the one hand, I'm addressing human rights issues, and on the one hand, it's a piece of journalism. On the other hand, it's also a film. And so if, you know, the film also spends a lot of time just lingering on the faces of deported children, or showing empty spaces where violence has taken place. And those are kind of cinematic tools. And I'm, in some ways, you know, more interested in those than I am in trying to affect policy per se. I mean, you know, you're trying to strike up a balance in filmmaking. You know, the kind of perfect way, I think, to summarize those two efforts. John Else, who teaches in the Berkeley School of Journalism, was an advisor to me in the when I participated in the Sundance Labs with this film, and he gave me this great piece of advice. I was really struggling with an early cut of the film, and I didn't know what to do with it. And the original cut that I had was a kind of very lyrical, very poetic, and not as information rich. And he said, "Look," he said, "you're trying to do too many things at once." He's like, "Focus on one thing at a time." And here's what I would do. He said, "Go ahead and cut the film that Frontline would hire you to make. Just do a straight journalistic piece." He said, "Once you finish that film, go ahead and weave in the lyrical and poetic elements that you're so interested in." He said, "Go ahead and make the film that Frontline would fire you for being too poetic, you know, too lyrical." And so that's ultimately what I tried to do with the film, is to kind of, you know, create a blend of something that's responsible journalistically, that's accurate, but at the same time is trying to show you texture. And I think that's something that news can't do. Like, that's something that the cable news can't do. It's going to be straight reporting. Hopefully it's accurate on the cable side, right? But then, you know, they're not able to give you a sense of, like, what the light looks like at dusk, just, you know, those films don't allow for, like, a moment to just see two children playing on the border for a few minutes. You know, to give you a sense of the sounds and the color and almost the taste of a place. And that, to me, is almost as important as the story itself. I want it to be experiential. I want people to get a sense of that, you know.
So you're hoping to inspire an emotional appeal that will inspire people to act or to care more about all these numbers that the media are pushing out?
I think that that's definitely a strategy. I mean, you know, it's only by seeing how people live and getting a sense of the texture of a place that audiences will connect. It's also just, I think that's also the work of an artist or a filmmaker, is just to create something that's evocative, hopefully going to compel people to think about a place in a different way. You know, if you notice, there's no violence in the film to speak of. So we're always talking about violence, and the threat of violence is always lurking around the corner, but there are no demonstrations of violence. You know, at the top of the film, there's archival footage of the aftermath of violence. But it's really, you know, the film is actually a pretty quiet film that way. We're just really allowing people to have space to reflect on what's happening and what's about to happen. And I think that for me, the goal of the filmmaker there is to kind of get into people's heads and to allow these things to linger for a while, rather than just, you know, going for the kind of obvious choices.